The U.S. government was the latest in a long line of governments to disclose their investigations of where UFOs appear in their territories and why. Now we know why they are here. They want Earth's resources and our resources, even those in our bodies. And they are colonizing the sea and certain strategic energy sources, such as a volcano in Mexico, where fleets have appeared as if from underground to consume or capture resources when the volcano belches ash or during magnetic storms. What we still don't know is how our political leaders feel about these colonies, or if they struck a secret deal. In either case, life on Earth as we know it is about to change. Come with us as we dig deeper into the evidence and find the truths too ominous for governments to acknowledge publicly. Alien Colony Earth, Human Harvest. Two decades into the 21st century, many governments have declassified their UFO investigations. The U.S. was one of the latest in a long line of governments to divulge their records of encounters with craft displaying capabilities and speeds that have baffled scientists. Pilots have wondered if the crafts were unmanned. The famous Tic Tacs encountered by the USS Nimitz carrier group in 2015 flew straight down 60,000 feet in 0.78 seconds. The 12,000 G-forces of that drop would instantly kill a human pilot. The craft showed no traces on infrared cameras, which raises questions about what propels them to these incredible speeds. Now, as governments admit that dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of sightings remain unexplained, more and more people have their eyes on the skies. In 2019, there were around 6,000 sightings, around twice as many as 2018. Analyzing the sightings, a pattern emerges. These crafts tend to appear more often near nuclear assets, polluted sites, volcanoes, fault lines, and magnetic anomalies. UFOs show hostility to nuclear weapons, disabling about 20 on the ground in Maelstrom, Montana in 1967 and near Bilokorovich, Ukraine in 1982. As well as shooting a ballistic missile out of the stratosphere in 1964 near Big Sur, California. Is it an adversarial government eliminating national nuclear arsenals? Or are they interstellar travelers from another planet giving us a message? Governments know more than they're revealing. There have been encounters between human pilots and these objects as long as humans have been in the sky. There have also been various UFO crashes and mid-air collisions. Both military and civilian aircraft have been grounded due to UFO flyovers and UFO interference with airborne aircraft in Colombia, Chile, Spain, Puerto Rico, and Chicago, just to name a few. And in some cases, UFOs have chased, fired on, and eluded the most advanced government aircraft of each age with apparent ease. Undersea sanctuaries and natural resources. There are rumors of undersea bases, but it's not clear whether UFOs often plunge into the water in order to evade humans or to take advantage of resources there. Are they here because they want to exploit Earth's resources? Do they live here, like us, just separately, underground or underwater? Or perhaps these craft are of our own making, but our governments are keeping it a secret. What's clear is the UFOs move with much greater ease than any known human craft in all mediums, space, sky, sea, and even Earth, as we'll see. More than one type of unidentified craft have visited Earth's nuclear installations. Likewise, with the Tic Tacs that seem to stalk a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, which do not have the same appearance or behavior as the disc-like luminescent or incandescent UFOs or the bright star which appeared over Tehran. Some key facts about the Tic Tacs, hidden deep in the scientific analysis, have been left out of media reports and even most UFO documentaries on the Nimitz incident. According to a report by SCU, Scientific Coalition for UFO Studies, on the 2004 USS Nimitz incident, the Tic Tac's acceleration from a standing hover at 80,000 feet, zooming down to 20,000 in 0.78 seconds, yields a maximum velocity of 104,895 miles per hour at the midway point. These distances were misquoted as much lower in public statements by the officers, including Air Intercept Controller Kevin Day. For some reason, these numbers were not widely published in no newspaper and no documentary. Many of them misquote the speeds and distances or mistake which video is which, perhaps because six-figure speeds seem absurd. LCDR Jim Slate said the Tic Tac had defined edges, but along those defined edges there appeared to be a fuzzy or wavy-looking border. Around the surface of the object, he said, it looked like what the heat waves would look like coming off a hot paved road, or what the carrier deck looked like if you looked across it when in the Gulf in the Mideast. This fuzzy membrane could indicate the presence of plasma on the vehicle's surface, which is the same type of technology patented by a scientist in 2008. Plasma is the fourth fundamental state of matter, in which the gas becomes electrically conducive to the point that long-range electric and magnetic fields dominate the behavior of the matter. Although plasma is the most common form of matter in the universe, it is still greatly a mystery because of its scarcity on Earth. Theoretically, the Tic Tac has electrodes that ionize the surrounding air into plasma in a process called magnetohydrodynamics. The apparent plasma covering may be another sign that the Tic Tacs were not created on Earth. The best scientists in America and France work together to study plasma on the surface of the sun rather than trying to create it on Earth, due to the instability of nuclear fusion plasma. However, a scientist from Lockheed Martin authored one of the 32 formerly top-secret research studies in the AATIP investigation, entitled Aneutronic Fusion Propulsion, which involves a portable nuclear fusion generator capable of holding highly energized plasma gas at hundreds of millions of degrees Fahrenheit, for which Lockheed has quietly obtained the patent, according to The Drive, while loudly bragging about the skunkworks compact fusion project on its website. Witnesses said the Tic Tacs seemed to spin just before they would dart off, consistent with behavior mentioned in other cases, but a fact that was missed by all other media and reports, and also a part of the patent in 2008. The Tic Tac's spin is an indication of their propulsion system, or at least one part of it. When an object spins, it generates a magnetic field proportional to the velocity of the spinning. Certain metals can be used to create magnetic fields through spin currents at the subatomic level. These insights are part of the emerging field called spintronics, short for spin electronics, referring to the charge created by the electron's spin. So far, much of the application of this field has been applied to the flow of information in computers using iron as a conductor. UFOs not only use spin, they are made of a super heavy metal that does not occur on Earth. The existence of the 115th element was first asserted in 1989 by Bob Lazar, a former government scientist who had worked at Area 51 after the Roswell crash. Though Lazar was discredited at the time, he later turned out to be correct when Moscovian was officially discovered by Russians in 2003 and renamed Unipentium by scientists at the Lund University in Sweden in 2013. When the 115th element decays, the reaction is so powerful that it emits X and gamma rays, which would explain why some have referred to UFOs as appearing like stars, because they are propelled by a level of chemical reaction produced in the hottest and most energetic objects in the universe: neutron stars, pulsars, supernova explosions, an area around the event horizon of black holes, as well as nuclear explosions, lightning, and lesser events of radioactive decay. The capabilities of the Tic Tacs, broken into their component parts, are leading to the scientific theories more daring than science has produced in the past few centuries. In May of 2020, the Navy introduced a laser weapon, and patents were filed for the Laser-Induced Plasma Effects Program. A national security journalist at Forbes remarked, "It is unlikely the Pentagon would release videos of their own secret weapon in a bizarre double bluff. More importantly, the technology always appears in the skies before the patents are filed, which defies all business logic." There is no world in which Lockheed creates an operable technology and allows it to be deployed before obtaining the patent. Therefore, the Tic Tacs from 2004 were not creations of a known U.S. government agency or defense contractor. Another mystery elided by most commentators is the massive submerged object the Tic Tac was hovering above. Could it have been bound for the underwater base off the coast of Malibu, California? There is a lot of speculation online that the round shelf with the columns below seen on Google Maps may house a secret base of some kind. Some say it belongs to the U.S. government and connects with underground tunnels that are rumored to reach top-secret bases in New Mexico and Area 51, Nevada. Every government for itself. The UFO phenomenon seemed to accelerate after the advent of nuclear weapons. The phenomenon continues to be centered around nuclear facilities even today. The apparent monitoring of UFOs of Earth's wars and the development of nuclear power in various countries throughout the better part of the last century created opportunities for further technological revolutions for humanity because of the UFO crashes and collisions. More than a few governments have recovered craft of unknown origin, and from these, new man-made craft have been attempted through reverse engineering. The progress of these projects is something governments are still keeping close to the vest. But some retired government scientists have gone public with their knowledge of advanced propulsion systems created by the U.S. government. The subjects explored by the AATIP's scientists is an obvious sign for those in the know. Why would the government commission studies on technological approaches to controlling external devices in the absence of limb-operated interfaces? The simplest and most obvious explanation would be that the UFO that crashed at Roswell, in addition to others known and unknown to the public, had no visible buttons or controls. Having recovered the bodies of the pilots, the government scientists were obliged to conclude that the pilots controlled the ship with their thoughts, as the witnesses of the Tic Tacs also concluded. It seems the U.S. government is way ahead of other governments with these technologies. For example, there was a massive UFO flap in Belgium, and when Iranian Air Force pilots engaged with UFOs in air confrontations. In the case of Belgium, about 13,000 people reported seeing the same triangular UFO in 1989, and the Belgium authorities contacted the U.S. government to ask if the craft was one of theirs. The same has happened as a result of luminescent objects appearing over Iran's strategic sites since the late 1960s. The U.S. and Iran had similar experiences with flying discs displaying interest in both countries' nuclear sites in 1975 and 1976. During 2 weeks in 1975, nuclear sites in Montana, Michigan, and Maine were visited by objects variously described as helicopters, aircraft, unknown entities, and brightly lighted fast-moving vehicles. The flap was reported in the Washington Post in 1979 after the declassification of 900 pages of government documents in response to an FOIA request. The documents reveal that Air Force fighter planes sent in responses were unsuccessful, as were extensive efforts to track and detain the objects. Then, a year later in Iran, after 4 calls from local residents in Tehran, an air traffic control tower operator saw something like a star, but bigger and brighter. So, he decided to scramble an F-4 from the nearby Cherokee Air Force Base to investigate. The pilot was able to see the object from 70 miles away due to its brilliance. But as he closed in within 25 miles, his craft lost all instrumentation and communications. As soon as he turned away from the object, all of the equipment came back online. 10 minutes after the first F-4 took off, a second one was launched. This pilot was able to lock his radar on the object, which he described as emitting a sequence of blue, green, red, and orange colors so quickly that all could be seen at once. The pilot pursued the target. It moved away and later launched another brightly colored orb which headed straight for the F-4 at a high rate of speed. The second object moved to intercept the F-4, and the pilot locked in on his new target and moved to fire a missile only to discover his equipment was not responding. The object kept coming at him, so he put his plane into a dive to evade his pursuer, which flew around his craft and suddenly flew back and rejoined with its mothership. Then another object appeared to come out of the other side of the first, moved straight down very quickly, coming to rest near the ground, which surprised the pilot and his crew because they were expecting a large explosion due to the velocity of its descent. The object emitted a bright light over 2 or 3 kilometers, and the pilot crew lost visual of the craft as their instruments again went offline, and they flew around trying to spot the craft visually. They later saw a cylinder-shaped object about the size of a T-bird with bright, steady lights on each end and flashers in the middle. The crew returned to the dry lake bed where the object was believed to have landed in a helicopter. They ended up finding a little house where the residents reported seeing something like lightning with a loud noise. This incident echoed throughout the American government, and the U.S. sent investigators to interview Iranian government officials, with resulting reports going to the Secretary of State, the CIA, the White House, the United States Air Force, and the Army Chiefs of Staff, as well as DIA, among various others including U.S. forces in Europe. The uncommon level of interest shown by U.S. authorities may signal American alarm over the capabilities demonstrated by the UFOs. Even years after the U.S. government officially ended its Project Blue Book, with its hack in charge declaring that nothing of scientific value is gained by investigating UFOs. However, Iran's experience with UFOs was far from over. In 2004, near the Iraq heavy water reactor, in the region of Nandab, Iranian Air Force pilots chased a green luminous object that would disappear and appear a few miles away, changing altitude even outside the atmosphere and moving at speeds from Mach 7 to Mach 10. In 2009, the Iranian Air Force Strategic Research and Studies started looking into various incidents with strategic state assets, concluding the objects were man-made and that these were CIA drones. CIA drones such as the RQ-170 Sentinel or the Predator don't travel 3 times faster than the SR-71 Blackbird, which reached Mach 3. The unmanned experimental NASA X-43 traveled briefly at Mach 9.6 in 2004, but then intentionally crashed into the ocean. Defense and national security writers at the National Interest 2020 and Forbes 2014, who more recently analyzed the incidents in light of known programs and military capabilities, had no explanation. So, which country made them? Uncle Sam is not going to admit that it doesn't have any better of an idea than Iran, who made these crafts. Now, as in 1976, it is a powerful form of deterrence for the U.S. government to allow the Iranian government to overestimate their military capabilities. But if it was anyone in the U.S., we would already have heard about it. Patents would have been filed long ago. Not 2 or 10 years ago in the cases of combat fusion reactors and laser weapons, which UFOs have been demonstrating the use of for at least 80 years. The other possibilities are Russia or China. But AATIP actually began as an effort to root out whether this was the case. And a senior defense official who requested anonymity said, "The consensus was we really couldn't find anything of substance." Alien bases, interdimensional portals, and electromagnetic anomalies. More compelling clues about the behavior, capabilities, and intentions of UFOs, as well as responses of governments, come from Latin America. Ecuador began experiencing major UFO incidents in 1979. Starting in 1982, the Ministry of Defense undertook an investigation which was brought under the umbrella of CEIFO, a new agency for UFO investigation, headed by a famous UFOologist, all of which was declassified in 2007. Like Guadalupe Island off the coast of Mexico, in Ecuador, the UFOs often go off radar around Chedije, where some believe there is a dimensional portal in the province of Marabi and/or an alien base there underwater. Apparently, United States Air Force pilots had the same experience of UFOs going off radar near Chedije, but this was concealed. According to the government's disclosures, one of the cases narrated by military men, among them Admiral Luis Jaramillo, former Commander General of the Navy, involved the existence of the alleged base at Cruceta, said Rodriguez. According to the document, Jaramillo stated that while in command of the SS-101 Shirai submarine submerged off the Manabí coast, 50 nautical miles from the Cruceta beach, he detected the existence of a vast undersea hangar of UFOs. Off the coast of Pescara, Italy, there is a rumored undersea UFO base from which UFOs entering, leaving, and traveling under the water. This activity became so intense in June of 1978 that terrified local fishermen refused to go out to fish without an escort by the Italian Coast Guard. This flap, the most widely reported in the country's history, coincided with the underwater seismic events that caused the tsunami on June 21st. Observers in the area, including officers of the Italian Navy, have seen solitary red spherical objects or groups of them flying in formation, often out of the sea day and night. People in the countries of the other side of the Adriatic, in Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, Albania, and Bosnia, have reported seeing the same lights and spheres plunging into the sea. Some say it was a base that was later abandoned by the UFOs. But as with the US government, the Italian government knows more than it is willing to reveal. Hopefully, this will change in the near future. Though spokesmen deny it, the U.S. government is interested in the potential of portals in other dimensions, as evidenced by the subjects of AATIP research papers. Traversable wormholes, stargates, negative energy, positron propulsion, extracting energy from the quantum vacuum, as well as attaining warp drive through the manipulation of extra-dimensional dark energy. On January 22, 2017, an object simply disappeared directly into the side of the mountain on camera in broad daylight. Did it enter through the mouth of a cave, or did it displace the soil and rocks as it flew through? It is well known that there is a vast system of caves in and around the mountain, but UFOs also fly through mediums while displacing matter and energy, as well as space and time. Observers have also claimed to see beings standing around near the mountain and quickly moving around its summit. One of the most curious cases of a suspected UFO base comes from Mexico, where civilians and military have encountered and recorded UFOs for decades. Many claim the country hosts a UFO base in the active volcano Popocatépetl, just 43 miles southeast of Mexico City. The volcano is extremely dangerous, and the 17,800-foot peak is monitored by various video cameras at all times. The Disaster Management Agency of the Mexican government and local media have cameras trained on the mountain that smokes, according to its name. These cameras have captured some very compelling footage in the past few years. Not only do UFOs of different shape and size fly around the crater, they have been observed flying directly into the crater, often at night, even when the volcano was erupting. The objects fly in at a high speed and disappear, or they fly out in a column of blurred light as seen here. Within a few seconds of a massive explosion on January 28, 2020, a UFO passed directly over the crater. Similar and perhaps equally numerous sightings have happened at another volcano in Mexico called Colima. Why do UFOs hang around volcanic plumes? Some have suggested that the beings thought to be pilots of these craft, the Greys, were turned into interstellar refugees by volcanic parasitism on their home planet. It does seem like these craft do more than monitor volcanic activity. They seem to consume some material from the volcanic plumes, which contain the largest deposits of heavy radioactive isotopes found naturally on Earth. It may be that the UFOs require these highly volatile heavy elements, radon, lead, and polonium, to break down or fuse in nuclear fission and/or fusion reactions that power their propulsion devices. In addition, at least in Mexico, UFOs descending into the crater may be swimming around in lava, which is probably less hot than their plasma shield. Mexico's island of Guadalupe also hosts UFO visitations, occasionally observed by local fishermen and pilots. The island is home to a magnetic anomaly, which has also led to speculation that the UFO's reason for converging there during the Nimitz incident was due to the magnetic activity. Because these anomalies correspond with fractures in the Earth's crust, scientists believe that deep-water magnetic anomalies are caused by the presence of lava in the upper oceanic crust. It is unknown if the presence of the UFOs is any way correlated with what scientists have called geomagnetic storms, measured by radio telescopes in Michoacán and the Mexico City Cosmic Ray Observatory. There may be some relationship, especially considering that one of the storms took place a few days after a UFO flew into the crater in 2012. But none of the Earth's volcanoes have as many compelling sightings as Popocatépetl. It is unknown whether the UFOs are causing or monitoring these seismic space weather events, but they clearly take an interest. Earth colonization, abductions and mutilations, paranormal threats. It's evident for me that we're not alone in this world or in the universe. Today, with new technology, the videos made on cell phones, added with Facebook and Twitter, an experience like this can be much more open, so those who have seen UFOs but fear being called crazy can feel like they're not the only ones who saw what they saw. In 1997, the Chilean government created an office called the Comité de Estudios de Fenómenos Aéreos Anormales, CEFAA, to investigate UFO sightings as well. Contrary to the total secrecy and mystery of its U.S. counterparts, the CEFAA has a public presence. Taken together, these diverse cases seem to indicate that the Earth is not just being visited, it has been colonized. It may be that we are sharing this planet with other extraterrestrial races, but we have been led to believe that we are alone, at home on planet Earth. Prehistoric man documented the appearance of UFOs, and some civilizations explicitly sought to communicate with them by creating monuments, such as Stonehenge and the Nazca Lines, to attract beings flying at high altitudes. What governments hide is that they have long sought to collaborate with these beings as well, and they have specialists for interfaces with aliens. Governments have eagerly sought out mediums and people abducted by UFOs in order to learn why the aliens take an interest in certain humans. One by one, governments around the world have laid down their cards. Most of them just know that the objects are unidentified and behave in ways we do not fully understand. However, since more is known than revealed, we must speculate about what aliens seek from Earth by analyzing the behavior of UFOs with cattle mutilations and abductions. It is evident from the bulk of these cases that UFOs seek to extract various substances from cows and perhaps from humans as well. These substances seem to be associated with emotions and the substances in the body responsible for them. including potentially adrenaline and hormones released during moments of fear, as well as reproductive substances and those associated with the immune system. One location in the U.S. has become like a laboratory for scientists to observe UFOs and paranormal phenomena that seems to attract them. Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. This 512-acre parcel of land includes geography typical of Utah, rocks and desert, and a plateau in which there are few settlements, including an old homestead. Skinwalker Ranch is unique because of the frequent incidence of events of high strangeness often associated with UFO visitations. And the homestead is where the paranormal phenomena seems to be concentrated. Why? What happened in this homestead and the surrounding area to create this spiritual vortex? The answer seems to be violence and hatred. The site was originally next to the Ute territory and north of Navajo territory. The two tribes had a long-standing feud, and the Utes were known to take Navajo slaves. The hatred of the Navajos drove them to curse the Utes with a skinwalker, a shape-shifting sorcerer of Navajo lore. The bizarre history of the area provides a sort of logic to surmise why UFOs tend to visit this cursed place. Perhaps due to the geography, or maybe because of the centuries of suffering and bloodshed that cursed the land. UFOs appearing as red and blue balls of light have been spotted plunging into the man-made reservoir in Bottle Hollow, next to Skinwalker Ranch. The Utes believe certain bodies of water were wells of negative power, out of which evil spirits would rise and pull you in. These legends are helpful, but may misunderstand the motives of those in control of the UFOs. These beings seem to be harvesting various resources with significant harm to local inhabitants, and the government has been all but powerless to understand, much less stop. The U.S. government is still aware of these facts, and Harry Reid, the former Senate Majority Leader, sent an emissary to Skinwalker Ranch to observe the property and hear about the phenomena from the then owner, Robert Bigelow. The emissary was a physicist, and whatever sentient intelligence that inhabits the ranch appeared in the form of a Mobius strip in the air above the man. Needless to say, the physicist was impressed by the odd apparition, unseen by the others in the room. Robert Bigelow eventually sold the property in 2016 to a new investor, Brandon Fugel, who is carrying on Bigelow's investigation, which remains mostly shrouded in mystery. For our purposes, the poltergeist or sorcerer that haunts Skinwalker is material primarily in its relation to the UFO phenomena, which visits the area as a consequence of the availability of electromagnetic fields, as well as hapless cattle to prey on. From the outside, the appearance of UFOs in and around volcanoes and other sites of electromagnetic activity and radiation emissions seems similar to the situation at Skinwalker. Traces left by UFOs when they land or crash include radiation and phosphorus in the soil, and radiation burns for humans that have gotten close or touched them. Events of high strangeness, such as Bigfoot sightings, as well as sightings of the Virgin Mary, have accompanied the appearance of UFOs in other places in the U.S. and Latin America. It is unknown what relationship, if any, exists, but UFOs emit and seem to require electromagnetic energy, which may have some effect on human perception and other dimensions, resulting in apparitions and allege appearances of interdimensional beings, such as extinct mammals, shape-shifting beings, and deities. Magnetic anomalies are capable of having physical and psychological effects on people, but our knowledge of them is limited. Whether it has more to do with human perception or with actual appearances in the flesh will depend on your point of view. It is notable that such events do transpire in some UFO cases. Some speculate that UFOs seek to cultivate fear in the onlookers, which would make sense if the UFOs possessed the capability to influence the perception of human witnesses toward acute fear. From all of this, we can conclude that humans should be wary of UFOs because they are dangerous for humans to be exposed to, both because of their radioactivity, their use of laser and tractor beams both to damage, disable, and down aircraft and capture people and even vehicles, as well as their occasional attention to harvest substances from humans and animals. Many government officials around the world believe UFOs constitute a national security threat, but many humans have built relationships with these travelers, even government officials. Although some have said there are more, there are generally thought to be 5 to 7 primary races that have visited Earth, as attested by the former Canadian Defense Minister, Paul Hellyer. The Greys, a race of shorter humanoid beings with smooth skin and prominent dark eyes, are said to be friendly with humans and believed to originate from Zeta Reticuli. The dwarfs are similar to the Greys, but shorter and sometimes hairy. The Nordics are around 6 feet tall and human-looking with blonde hair and muscular builds, perhaps sometimes mistaken for angels, which are thought to come from the Pleiades star cluster. The treatment of humans by these races varies according to those who claim to interact with them, sometimes as abductees, sometimes as contactees, meaning they accompanied or interacted with aliens on a UFO willingly. Some abductees claim they saw humans involved in the process of examination on board a UFO. A few people have claimed to witness the collaboration of alien beings and government officials and scientists in secret bases on the Earth. It would seem that the U.S. government has sought to quell reports of its collaboration with alien groups by allegedly killing witnesses. However, other governments have shown interest in contactees by interviewing them to learn more about their experience. This gives credibility to the reports of people being taken aboard UFOs. For those so inclined, there may be a benefit to humanity that not all people speaking on behalf of humanity are not government officials interested in trading favors. You give us your aviation and warfare technology, and we won't retaliate against you for abducting and terrorizing our citizens and massacring our livestock, because we can't. Further, go ahead and build bases and hangars under the oceans, which every government has plundered and polluted with abandon, since it belongs to no government and is greatly unexplored. Meanwhile, we have no idea how many ships are in their fleets or how many motherships potentially miles in diameter are sitting at the bottom of our oceans, or hovering about in orbit inspecting NASA projects and getting filmed on NASA cameras. Our civilian and military pilots feel watched and even hunted in the skies, in our airspace and over the oceans, and governments owe it to their citizens to disclose what they know and what they don't about the motives of these visitors and fellow inhabitants of our planet. We know they are here. The people holding the cameras are not fooled. They know they're not looking at weather balloons or the northern lights when the light zooms across the sky. changing colors and directions, interacting with and merging with other lights, and landing at sites well known by locals on the Earth. The U.S. government can take the approach of the Chilean government's agency in charge of UFOs as an example of how to serve the interest of public and national security by educating civilian and military authorities on how to behave in the presence of UFOs, which seem to want to play with human pilots, but usually just scare the shit out of them and cause emergency landings and evasive maneuvers. How are pilots supposed to know if the UFO is initiating combat or just flying by to wave? Which race of aliens is the pilot, and how has this race behaved in the past? By now, dozens of pilots have died as a result of UFO appearances around the world. Do governments or does one government have secret agreements with these beings? Some former public officials have come out with allegations that there is a high-level collaboration between the U.S. government and an alien race, exchanging technology and making decisions both on Earth and in space. The formal assembly and disclosure of the Space Force as the fifth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces is no surprise to many who knew about the off-the-shelf project revealed back in 1989 when this force was already well underway, but was reportedly disbanded in consequence of the Challenger disaster. What became of the Space Force, and what is the real purpose of the new one? Have governments collaborated in the colonization of Earth by these races, or are they powerless to stop them? Americans do not yet know. Luckily for us, several international companies and organizations have been created to arrive at answers, often in concert between private businessmen and former government officials disgusted with the culture of excessive secrecy and sometimes violent persecution and character assassination of UFOologists and the government's own whistleblowers. We are at the dawn of understanding our place in this world we have always thought of as ours. Are these beings friends trying to help us better understand the universe? Or are they foes sent here to chastain us for our use of nuclear weapons and to slowly build up forces in order to enslave us? We must be vigilant, unafraid, and open to the truth, whatever that is, and be prepared for everything with thought we know to change forever. Historic revelations, resistance to disclosure, protocols for contact. In 2020, former officials, especially from the military and intelligence, have spurred Congress to demand reports from the government's ongoing top-secret investigation of the UFO phenomenon. At the same time, new pieces of information are emerging from news reporting, particularly the New York Times. In early July, a report on the investigation quoted an astrophysicist confirming that the Pentagon is in possession of off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. These words were immediately trumpeted in headlines around the world. This momentous revelation offers credibility to the claims of government whistleblowers going back 73 years to 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, as well as the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942, when an enormous craft hovering over the City of Angels for hours while being fired on with a barrage of anti-aircraft artillery for hours, killing 5 civilians. Like Roswell, this incident was covered up, claiming a false alarm and that it was an escaped weather balloon. Eyewitnesses of the event do not agree with this explanation. In Germany's Black Forest in 1936, a UFO crash enabled the Nazis to back-engineer many aspects of the technology from the wreckage, explaining how Hitler was technologically so far ahead of the world with many advancements, many learned of only after the war. The stealth bomber was back-engineered from the Horton wing design, of which was purportedly taken from the crashed UFO. The Nazis mastered rocketry far in advance of the U.S., and Werner von Braun later admitted, after being captured and brought to the U.S. via Operation Paperclip, when asked how did the Nazis have such accelerated technologies, he pointed to the sky saying, "We had help from them." With at least 30 other cases of potential UFO crashes around the world, the public disclosure of the U.S. and other governments' recoveries of off-world craft and attempts to recreate them are long overdue. The next step for humanity is to contact and communicate with extraterrestrials. And to do this, we must be able to distinguish between off-world and man-made UFOs. The Japanese government is the first to officially undertake the development of protocols for UFO contact, announced in May of 2020, but this applies primarily to military and civilian authorities. There is an urgent need for both disclosure and contact protocols in view of the increasing presence of UFOs, the alarming trend of airspace intrusion by fleets of UFOs, hundreds strong, into Earth's atmosphere. If these crafts were reserved or apprehensive previously, that era may be over.
They're getting smarter. They're learning. Think so?
In wake of the destruction we've witnessed, including the loss of my hometown, San Francisco, we offer a full surrender to the invading forces, including Los Angeles as a permanent headquarters for the Nephilim. Nephilim, thank you. I have met with their high command and they assure me they wish to coexist on this planet in peace. As rulers of this world, they will rebuild society into a new order.
If humanity is left by its political leaders without information on whom or what is swarming into our skies, there will be widespread panic. Right now, people following the trend are alarmed, as well as casual observers who have filmed flocks of UFOs appearing, sometimes like probes from a mothership, and moving in formations before vanishing in a flash, defying the laws of physics as we know them. Even the longtime UFOologists perceive a change in the nature of the UFO phenomenon. There is an intensification, a new deliberateness, and an escalation of sightings. The people are growing hungry for answers. If the government refuses to come clean, government officials can take matters into their own hands. After all, resignations and leaks are what spurred previous disclosures against high-level resistance. We all must adjust to the possibility that not only are we not alone, but also that Earth may not be our planet. Maybe it never was, as early researcher and author Charles Fort proclaimed decades ago, the Earth is a farm. We are someone else's property. Earthly governments may not be the sovereign power of their territories. We must confront these alien colonists, not live in a grandiose delusion of our earthly supremacy. The UFOologists and the few brave scientists who are advancing our knowledge of UFOs are still greatly uncertain about the motives of our visitors. Maybe UFOs are interstellar tourists. Their presence on Earth goes back at least 80 years, and there is abundance of evidence of extraterrestrial visitation going back thousands of years. In the accumulated close encounters between now and them, there are very few that involve displays of any aggressive behavior. Although they obviously have the capability, and in an uncertain world, that could change, and if it does, we are utterly powerless over them. Observing UFO behavior, there is evident scientific curiosity. There is caution bordering on evasiveness. Other times it seems like they are monitoring, mapping, extracting, and inseminating earthly species. The mystery of the UFOs is now more concerning than ever. At the top of the concern list is their apparent interest in nuclear installations, with several incidences in which UFOs being present near missile sites correspond with the inexplicable shutdown of ICBMs and other nuclear weapons systems. The phenomenon demands the most sober and solemn action now. Contact looms as the most significant event of human history. Yet here we are, after almost a century of study, yet it remains either classified or unrealized, and the identity of these objects remains greatly concealed. The future of humanity on Earth may hinge on our ability to respond in an organized fashion and collaborate with our interstellar guests. We must ascertain their motives, at the very least. With these stakes, no part of humanity can be left living in the past. Whatever it may hold, we must confront our planetary destiny as one.